If you'd all stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance tonight with my student from Porter Elementary, Kason Davis. Roll call.
Fred Goins. Vandy Kemp.
Present.
Brian King.
Present.
Robbie Kirkland.
Here.
Joe Lindsay.
Present.
Erica Moore. Present. Phil Porter.
Here.
All are present.
This meeting's called to order. Up first on recognitions and presentations, we will have the Carpenters Elementary Choir.
These are some of our students from our Carpenters Elementary School singers and our fifth graders. We are doing a production of Annie Kids, and so we wanted to come and give you a little sneak peek. The production is not until May, and it will be performed at William Blount High School. And we always love that they help us connect in that way, and some of their students come and they mentor our kids, and it is just a great and wonderful relationship that we have with them. So we wanted to give you a selection of two of the songs that we will be performing. We will be doing It's a Hard Knock Life and Easy Street, so we hope you enjoy.
Got no folks to
street, easy street. Annie is the key. Yes, sirree, yes, sirree, yes, sirree, yeah. Easy street, easy street. That's where we're gonna be.
Next up, we'll have the Drug and Alcohol Prevention Task Force, John Young and Melissa Crabtree.
What an awesome job by our students from Carpenters Elementary. There's no way that we will top that.
We don't dance.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Merle, members of our board, thank you for allowing me to speak before you tonight. It is always a pleasure to get to highlight the work that our teachers are doing in Blount County schools. Last year, the Blount County Commission had created an ad hoc committee to look at providing drug and alcohol prevention resources for the students of Blount County schools. The committee was made up of administrators, teachers, counselors, representatives from Be Aware Blount, the Blount County Sheriff's Office, the Blount County School Board, and the Blount County Commission. From that committee, a separate committee was developed in order to review and research various drug and alcohol resources in order to educate our students about the effects of substances on the human body. I have with me tonight 5 social health teachers that are utilizing these resources in their classes. Donna Hardwick and Elizabeth Frazier from Eagleton College and Career Academy, Lauren Lindsay from Heritage Middle School, Carol Iruli from Union Grove Middle School, and Melissa Crabtree from Carpenters Middle School. Donna, Elizabeth, Lauren, Carol, and Melissa were members of the committee who spent numerous hours meeting and working to collect resources that would benefit the students in our schools. Also, I want to offer a special thank you to the Blount County Commission for providing $11,000 for funding for this program. At this time, I would like to invite Mrs. Crabtree to allow her to share a brief rundown with you all.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Basically, after we met and we decided we were going to use the National Institute, oh my goodness, he's going to make me get in front of the microphone. National Institute on Drug Awareness curriculum, and we use this based on, as you can see, if you can see one of the screens, each year, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade, students are asked to take a survey for the state of Tennessee. And the surveys, most of our schools, actually all of the middle schools participated last year. And some of the data that we got back from this survey was a little alarming to us. The numbers had gone up considerably the number of students that said they had tried alcohol in the last 30 days and vaping and tobacco and nicotine addiction. Those numbers had gone up extremely high compared to what we'd had in the past few years. We took this to give us even more leverage for what we knew we needed to be doing, and that's introducing this to students. After the groups met together, we decided that we wanted to, we were going to start this year with 6th grade students and then expand it each year and include an additional grade. So the prime curriculum will be taught with 6th graders this year, and that's what we're working on right now. Then we'll do 6th and 7th next year, 6th, 7th, and 8th the year after that. The topics that we're covering, as you can see on the screen, I'm not going to read all of those to you, but we're looking at how these substances affect the teen brain, which is different from substance abuse in adults, quite different as a matter of fact. So we're looking at how nicotine affects the teen brain, the body's response to marijuana, drugs in the brain, opioid use and abuse, prescription stimulants, and so on. Those were some of the topics that reached out to us or that we felt like we needed to cover, and then the others listing there. In 6th grade, it's taught in approximately 12 to 15 class sessions. And again, like Mr. Young said, the County Commission gave us resources to include outside things such as speakers. There's a lot of digital media that we're using to follow this curriculum. And we are going to expand it. 23-24 school year, it will be 6th and 7th grade. 24-25, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will be exposed to the curriculum. We've had good results so far with what we're doing, and you can see here, these are just some little snapshots of students. These are students, Ms. Hardwick students at Eagleton, and it looks like there's a toxicity lesson where the students actually do a little experiment where they grow radish seeds, testing the different effects of toxic chemicals in certain amounts and things and how that affects. They love anything hands-on like that, so that's really good. There's Ms. Iruli's classes, and they're doing some experiments there as well. Ms. Frazier. Then some Carpenter's Middle students just researching nicotine and tobacco addiction. It's been eye-opening, I guess is one way to put it, to be able to include this in our curriculum and our classes. And we're all social health teachers, so we're teaching it out of that format or that classroom. Definitely a need for it, and you see that instantly when the students, with the questions that they have and the comments and the things that they add to these lessons, that they're teaching us a lot about things going on in homes that we may not have been aware of beforehand. But it's going over really well, a great program, a good curriculum. And we've got links to all of that in your information, and our parents get links to what we're doing as well, the curriculum. Anything you guys like to add for that? I think I've left out. Okay.
Thank you.
Student representatives now? Yeah. Next up, we'll hear from our student representatives. We have Heritage High School.
All right, so our CTE building renovation is still making good progress. So we have phase 1A, which is the drywall, electrical, and plumbing is almost complete. The soccer field lights are up and they are almost ready to be turned on. Our CTE programs visited Prospect Elementary School for their school-wide career day. We'd like to congratulate the Lady Mountaineers basketball coach Rick Howard on achieving 500 career wins in the region tournament. The Lady Mountaineers finished second in the region tournament and will play at Sevier County on Saturday, March 4th at 7 p.m. in a sub-state matchup. We'd like to congratulate our senior Grant Campbell on his commitment to play basketball at Freed-Hardman University. Our freshman Trinity Roberts finished third overall in the TSSAA State Wrestling Tournament, and our senior Nate McKee finished sixth overall. Our seniors Antonika Washington and Jennifer Melendez were awarded the Alcoa Blount County NAACP Freedom Fund Scholarship. Automotive collision repair students William Rodriguez, Caden McCowan, Tyler Sims brought home first place in painting, body, and estimating at the Regional Skills USA competition. Our senior Laura Lee McInnes was recently awarded the Smoky Mountain Fellowship of Christian Athletes Impact Award. This award goes to the student that represents the FCA core values of integrity, serving, teamwork, and excellence beyond the scoreboard. We'd like to thank our SROs, Sergeant Hood and Deputy McMurray. We are thankful to have great SROs to support us in keeping our school safe. We are still taking donations for Zach Penley's upcoming medical procedures in Texas. Donations can be made through My School Bucks or by contacting our school's office. Finally, round 1 is completed for the Battle of Our Mascots to support the East Tennessee Children's Hospital. Local high schools are matched up in a 16-team tournament-style bracket. Heritage students were able to raise $795, beating William Blount and advancing to round 2 against Maryville. Thank you.
And thank you for mentioning Coach Howard and his 500, and I believe that that victory was over Maryville High School.
In the month of February, says he had 4 students go to the state for wrestling. Tyson Click finished 2nd place, and many of our students are playing sports in the spring. Our elementary soccer teams have just started to practice. Our school's families have supported a student and his family as he goes through cancer treatments with cards, gifts, and hundreds in gift cards to help with food expenses. Samuel Everett will be administering the ACT to our juniors on March 7th. And our 8th graders have been invited to join Eagleton College and Career Academy for their spring formal and their spring trip to Dollywood. SESI has launched our new school website, and we have a calendar with all school events and sports schedules to help keep everyone up to date with what our students are doing each week. Samuel Everett will host their first dance on April 6th at the showroom here in Maryville. We have invited the 10th grade class at Eagleton College and Career Academy to join us for this special occasion, and our students are excited for an evening in Old Hollywood. And finally, our 4th to 8th graders are starting a book club this month, which is led by Dr. Loud.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Blount County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or district administrators. Please do not present complaints about an individual employee of the school district. If you wish to voice a complaint, you should contact the central office and ask to speak with the Director of Schools designee. Please be reminded this is a meeting to conduct business on matters focusing on students in the Blount County Schools. Tennessee Code Annotated 39-17-306 prohibits disrupting public meetings. You will have 3 minutes for comments. Thank you for your cooperation.
Up first to speak on library materials will be Reverend Isaac Bradshaw.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Okay. Good evening. My name is Isaac Bradshaw, and I'm an employee of Blount County Schools, but tonight I would like to speak to you as a priest and pastor ministering in this community. As a minister of the gospel, it's my duty to speak the truth, and the truth is this, that the Christian values of literacy and free exercise of thought are under attack in America, and that attack has come to Blount County Schools in this proposal to remove books from the hands of our students. My church holds to the traditional Christian teaching on human sexuality, but it would go past my pastoral duty to impose that view on people outside of my church. But that is precisely what is being proposed, that a few parents would impose their view of what is appropriate for someone else's child. To ban a book on the basis of political objection is definitionally censorship. Every parent has the right to determine what their child reads, but no parent has the right to determine what other people's children read. The truth is that no censorship is necessary. Each parent has the ability to limit what their child can access in a school library by simply contacting the school librarian. There is no need for book banning. A phone call will suffice. So why this effort? The truth is that these efforts are being driven by those who have moved into Blount County, rejected our values, and are attempting to replace those values and our public education with ill-informed reactionary politics. Their values are so far from ours that they have chosen our LGBT youth as the target of their bullying, and they are saying to our students that their stories, their families, and their lives are simply unworthy of being in a school library. They are saying this to a group of children that has a 300% higher rate of suicide ideation than their peers. These censors do not support public education, teachers, students, or public education. They wish to see it destroyed. But here is the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. We can stop this, but it starts today, and it starts with you standing for the truth. Thank you.
Amanda Clark.
Hi there. Good evening. Most of you all know me, but for those and I'm an English teacher at Heritage High School. Proud William Blount graduate, former district teacher of the year, freshman English instructor. I'm going to take a different approach tonight by starting first with a question. Do you remember the first time that you saw a character you identified with in a story? Chances are you probably do. And that is where this conversation has to begin tonight. Today's conversation regarding Policy 4.403 and library materials is most important for that reason. Our libraries and our schools should reflect the community members within it. Yesterday, Board of Education members should have received an email from me providing sections of my research into book bans that spans 3 degrees, a senior thesis, and my action research that I'm currently working on. My research and experience-rooted main points therein were: first, removing LGBTQ materials removes representation for an unidentifiable number of students, families, and staff in our schools. According to PEN America's Index of School Book Bans, last year Tennessee was 4th in the nation in regards to the number of book bans presented. Blount County Schools accounts for 2 of those. Among that data, 41% of the total books banned nationwide were banned due to LGBTQ content. However, despite this, only 22% of all bans focused on sexual content. The presence of LGBTQ characters and persons within these texts is not enough to justify the statement that they are inappropriate when these characters represent some of our families. Next, changing this policy in a way that could mean blanket bans for lists of titles may mean that we restrict a student's First Amendment rights as set forth in Board of Education versus PICO in 1982. This landmark Supreme Court decision, which is eerily reflective of today's attempts to ban books as pornographic when the challengers have not even read the text, dictates that school boards cannot take action against titles simply because they seek, by their removal, to prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. Limiting one student's First Amendment rights will ultimately, by precedent, limit every student's. My last 2 points, which were rooted more in my day-to-day experience and knowledge of what our educators today are facing, were instructional practices and strategies that have led to greater student gains and student progress as reflected in our test scores will be negatively impacted when student choice is affected, and the voices missing from this conversation are those of Blount County educators and school staff, not due to a lack of their care and concern, but due to a lack of redirection to the current board policy. In these challenges, beginning at the board rather than the school level, we do not even know that a dialogue regarding particular titles is needed until we see it in the newspaper or on social media. Now think back to that character from the beginning again. Imagine they're gone. Imagine that reflection of you is stolen from your access. As a proud graduate of this school system and a proud educator who wants to continue working for my students and families each day, please recognize that the signal you give tonight regarding these changes will undoubtedly have long-lasting reverberations. We cannot be a county that states excellence for all, and we cannot be a county that strives to support every kid, every day, every way, if we do not encourage and stand up for each and every voice in our communities to be heard.
Christy Prater.
My name is Christy Prater, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Faith family in this community as a Blount County native. We all have an interest here tonight. This is our community, and it will be what we make it. We are here in support of the board, the director, and teachers. Some of the finest people I know are in this room. But we are here as a group for the students tonight. They are our focus. As we look at the library policy, there are a few things we would like to ask you to consider. Number one, we do not feel that the American Library Association is the best rule for us to follow in this community. It does not share the views of our conservative community. We have a variety of beliefs among this community, but in the last presidential election, this community voted 71% conservative. Our public school system is a representation of our public views. We ask that you not use the American Library Association as the guide as you amend this policy tonight. Number two, we would like to ask you that you take a look at the internet policy that this board has already adopted and use it as a guide. I will read part of that for you tonight. The Director of Schools designee shall establish a process to ensure the district's education technology is not used for purposes prohibited by law or for accessing sexually explicit materials. The process shall include, but not be limited to, utilizing technology that filters, blocks, or otherwise prevents internet access for both students and adults to material that is obscene or pornographic, prohibiting and preventing a use from sending, receiving, viewing, or downloading materials that are deemed to be harmful to minors. The vendor contracts for internet use states this: prior to entering into any contract for the provision of digital or online materials created or marketed for kindergarten through 12th grade, the district shall obtain an assurance that the vendor shall adhere to state law. This determination includes ensuring that the vendor filters, blocks, or otherwise prevents access to pornography or obscenity, verifies in writing that the technology prevents a user from sending, receiving, viewing, or downloading materials that are harmful to minors, removes upon district request access to online materials for ages or audience that the district has determined the material to be age or audience inappropriate, and the removal will be within 1 business day of receipt of the district's request. We realize the internet policy is simply following state law. What we believe it would be a great guide in amending the library materials policy. It seems like a very common sense approach. It is our belief that children visiting libraries in the Blount County schools should not have access to material that is not age appropriate or material that is pornographic or obscene in nature. Thank you.
Beth Myers Reeves.
First of all, I'd like to address the board and thank you all for your service to our county. As far as library items, I'd like to start by addressing those who think we're just banning books because we're overly religious or we're MAGA or whatever it is that they believe. School is a place for academics. The different makeups of families today is not the purview of our public schools. We're supposed to be making sure that our students can read and write and do mathematics and have a basic understanding of science. That's not reflected in the current test scores in our county. I'd like to point out that for many years, there has been a push to ban books like Harper Lee's novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, because language in that book is offensive. But the point of that book is that the behavior of the townspeople, the vast majority of them, was offensive. And someone stood up against the injustice he saw at a time when that was not a popular view. I'd like to urge you not to see us as book banners, but I do believe that almost all of the books that certain parents are finding objectionable were written and published very recently, and they were published to respond to the demand for more information about a subject that has come to the forefront in our community. These are conversations, and this is material that should be addressed in the home. I'd like to acknowledge that there are a lot of children in every community in this country who do not have a home environment where it's safe to talk about a lot of things. But the public schools, because of that, cannot simply take over the emotional education of our children. That is the purview of the parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, trusted adults in children's lives. And I'm not saying that our teachers are not trusted adults in our children's lives. But public education is for academics. That's all I have to say on that.
I'm pretty sure it says Ari Baker. Am I close?
Hi, my name is Ari Baker, and I am a proud graduate of Heritage High School, and I'd like to speak to item 5 on the agenda, the library materials policy that so many people are here to talk about. First of all, thank you all for your service to Blount County and to education, and for your support of the principles of intellectual freedom as outlined in the existing policy being considered and expressed in the ALA's Library Bill of Rights. I'm going to tell a story. So in middle school, I checked out a book called The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear. It was published in 1958, and it won the Newbery Medal that year. It's a work of historical fiction that follows the story of a 16-year-old Kit who was an orphan and forced to leave her home in Barbados and live with relatives in a really stern Puritan community in Massachusetts colony. She befriends an ostracized old Quaker woman, and then when illness falls on their town, the town comes for their witch, the older woman, and then Kit by association. There are no witches or witchcraft in this book. My aunt was a teacher in my middle school and saw me reading it and told my mom, and I got in trouble. My family told me I shouldn't be reading books about witchcraft, and honestly, I didn't remember the details of this book until I looked it up, but I did remember that moment as a turning point in my understanding of my family. First, I realized that I probably should start hiding what I was reading about because strict parents raise the best liars. But most importantly, it cemented a suspicion that I'd already had at that age that my mom wasn't interested in engaging with me on hard topics. My mom didn't want to hear about how they weren't witches in that book. Just the word was dangerous enough to shut down any conversation. Beyond the world of books, I understood at that age that if an issue came up in my life that was more complicated than black and white, I had to deal with it on my own, and that is a devastating feeling that so many children and young adults experience because they have parents that believe they're trying to protect them by not letting them learn and talk and read about certain topics. That emotional isolation and lack of safety with the grown-ups in your life is more dangerous for your child than any book you can find in a Blount County school library. As previously stated by other speakers, parents already have the right to prevent their children from reading or checking out certain books. I work with librarians daily and serve on the board for the Tennessee Association of School Librarians. If you talk to your school librarian or your child's teacher or principal, I can guarantee they will work with you and provide alternate assignments if there's a book in a curriculum you object to, but you don't have the right to decide that for other people's children's. I urge this body to rely on the expertise of their trained librarians and educators and the existing collection development policies of those librarians when considering book challenges brought before this board. And I urge the parents listening, especially if you're one seeking to ban books, and it is book banning, to be clear. Do you think your child feels safe enough to come to you when things get complicated? Because life is complicated, and you're making the choice right now about whether you want to be involved. Thank you for your time.
I may be wrong. David Bouchard. Am I close?
Kind of close. It's Bernard.
Bernard.
No worries. My handwriting's awful. And I hear that a lot, actually, when I write on the board and stuff, because for the last couple of years, I've been working as a teacher in Blount County. The main thing I want to express here today, and I haven't prepared anything, is thanks to you all and this whole community. I felt so accepted here. Like, I really loved it. And I got into this racket last year, and this was the first job I got, and I thought, well, I'll do it for a year and I go somewhere else, right? You know, there's flexibility in this profession. But I've loved it here. I've loved being a part of this community. And I see this community reflect all the values that everybody here has come to talk about. And you can call them family values, you can call them conservative values, or whatever you like, but there's a lot of goodness, there's a lot of community caring about one another here, and it's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. I'm so glad to be a part of it. So I just really want to thank you all for having me. You know, censorship is not conservatism. Censorship is not American. It's not First Amendment. That's what we're about. And, you know, as a country, we're accepting of so many different kinds of people. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep this community growing and becoming better, because growth is American. If you don't grow, you shrink. Stuff like this potentially might prevent someone who really wants to come and work with your kids and help them get better at life and succeed. It might prevent someone like that from wanting to come work in this kind of place. So I want to encourage everybody to just keep doing what they've been doing and keep advancing these sort of values, which to me totally exclude this kind of censorship. And kind of the last and main point I want to make is, in working here in the last few years, I've seen no real evidence of anybody being poisoned, suffering from stuff like this. I've seen no evidence of anyone being indoctrinated. I've seen teachers are allies to students. They're not here to manipulate, control, encourage, politically or otherwise. And so thanks to everybody for having me, and I love being a part of this community. Thank you all for having me. I see you.
Sherry Petrosky. Am I close? Sherry Petrosky, or? Am I right?
Who am I talking to?
Am I right on the name?
Petrowski.
Okay.
Petrowski, yes. Yes, I am Sherry Petrowski. I began my teaching career in 1989 at Heritage High School, and I retired from Maryville City. Sorry, guys, but retired from Maryville City, Maryville High School specifically in 2016. So I've been listening to, and over the past few weeks or months, about this proposal, and I have a vested interest in it, and then I taught English, and I have a lot of these children in my world. In fact, at Maryville High School, I did sponsor the GSA. But I prepared a speech, if you will, because you're a pretty scary-looking group up there. So I'll continue. As the rhetoric on the apparent inappropriateness of certain books accessible to our children became louder and more incendiary, I decided to take a closer look into it. And I began to see words such as deviant and sinful and smut, along with a number of other really scary words. So concerned, I reviewed the proposed book ban list. And as a grandmother of 4 children and grandmother of 4 children in area schools, I and their parents certainly would not want any of those things introduced to our children. Nor would we condone it. So in the spirit of fairness and good faith, I ordered and purchased Heather Has Two Mommies. And this particular book on the list caught my attention because 2 of my 4 grandchildren also have 2 mommies. And so I read through the book, and I was reading it digitally to find those themes of the really scary words that I had seen. And then as I continued my research on LGBTQ suicides and the dangers of book banning, I began to realize, this is not about the books. I began to realize it's about fear and it's about judgment. It's a desire to pose sanctions on a population of our community and in our schools who are deemed undesirable by some, determined to impose their godly will upon others regardless of the cost. And I'm going to tell you the cost is going to be dear. Because as I look into the eyes of my grandchildren, 2 of them who have 2 mommies, they are loved, they are happy, they are well-adjusted children.
Thank you.
Oh, my time's up?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Bobby Hatcher.
Good evening. I'd like to talk for a moment about my mother. She was a kind, generous, compassionate, intelligent, self-taught, encouraging, empathetic, sympathetic, accepting, understanding human being. She was also an avid reader her entire life. Whenever we cleaned out her house after her passing, we found a chest full of clippings of the weekly bestseller list from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Regardless of the genre, if a book stayed on the bestseller list, she wanted to read it. It could be a biography, an autobiography, a mystery, a romance, historical fiction, a self-help book, a classic, or anything controversial. It really didn't matter. She wanted to read it because every time she read, she learned. She learned about other countries, other cultures, other religions, other ideas, other people. And through her reading, she not only increased her vocabulary, but she also increased her knowledge by vicariously looking through the lens of someone different from herself and her background. But let me also say this. My mother never grew 2 heads. She never burst into flames. And she never transformed into the devil incarnate. She was always the epitome of the person I described above. Reading was good for her, just as it's good for all of us, because it broadens our horizons. It keeps us, for lack of a better phrase, from staying stuck. And because through reading our eyes are opened and we learn. As for what we read, we always have choices, but reading choices are personal choices. It's not for us to police the choices of others, unless you feel the need to police the choices of your younger children. But let me say that to say this. In today's world of television, movies, social media, and other internet resources, good luck in shielding your children from much. And that leads me to another topic. Is shielding what we really want to do? Wouldn't a book that both parties can read be a tremendous opportunity for dialogue? Wouldn't that be a tremendous opportunity in actually getting to know one another better? Wouldn't that be an amazing avenue to further understanding and relationship growth? Bottom line, everybody's not like us. We're all unique. If that book that I'm reading and enjoying is not hurting you at all, and vice versa, why do we need to fight? Maybe a question that the opponents of certain books need to ask themselves is this: what do I fear? Answer that question honestly, and then you may realize that you're not truly afraid of a book at all. Perhaps it's the fact that you want to control people to be just like you so that you're more comfortable in your own skin. But is that fair? It's not my place to tell you what to read, and it's not your place to tell me what to read. We live in America, not Nazi Germany. So let's act as if that's true.
Corrine Dooley. Corrine Dooley. Oh.
Sorry, takes me a minute. Hello, I'm Corrine Dooley. I live in Blount County. I have grandchildren that go to these schools, and I'm concerned about censorship. There's a political and some religious attacking of marginalized groups in this country and across the country, and it scares me. I mean, the children, how are they going to grow up? They're not going to be tolerant or loving. They're going to be hateful of the other groups. I just find it amazing that we're going in this. The politicized agenda should not go over into the schools. You've got kids out there that have, two mommies, two daddies, have uncles, aunts, neighbors, friends that have contact and, are LGBTQ. And they shouldn't be denied access to books. They shouldn't, feel like they're not wanted in our community. LGBTQ has been around long before we were ever here, and it'll be here long after we're gone. And all of a sudden now it's becoming, just disgusting to some people. And it shouldn't be. It's a political battle that should not be existing. Just because you're LGBTQ does not mean it's pornographic, the LGBTQ books. I mean, being LGBTQ does not, they're calling it depraved and everything else. It's not. I raised my kids outside a gay community, and it was the most accepting, comforting area to be in. There wasn't all this, I hate you, you hate me type of stuff. And, and my kids are straight. It didn't rub off on them, but they're very tolerant and loving kids. And I would like to see our future kids loving and tolerant of others. We can't all be one thing. We have to accept differences. I don't want to see book banning. If it's raw sex in the book, that's one thing. But just because it's LGBTQ does not mean it's pornographic. I think we need to think of our children and give the support. It says high schools or any school has to just deal with reading, writing, and arithmetic. No, teachers are also involved, socially with these, not socially outside, but their social environment, their emotional state. They have to deal with that. You can't just ignore that. And so they're in our community, and we need to accept this. We need to accept them and not push them aside. When this fad of just attacking the LGBTQ is done, if they get away with this, what next? I am very concerned about that. They're going to take control of what the children learn, period. I mean, I'm frightened for our future. Whoops, sorry. Thank you.
Liz McCackron.
Wow, you got it right.
He got it right, no me.
I'm Liz McCathron. My husband and I live in Blount County, and our son attended public schools, K through 12 here. Members of the board, I am sorry that you and your teachers and your librarians are having to spend so much time dealing with parents' fears instead of what you are trained to do, educate children. I suppose fear of the unknown is part of human nature, and fear is a powerful motivator. But we humans are blessed with brains to reason and overcome our fears. A healthy brain seeks to broaden our knowledge, deepen our understanding, exercise our imagination, and discover our world and the marvelous variety of people in it. What a dull world it would be if we were all the same, or if we never questioned the status quo, if we could not put ourselves into others' shoes and get to know them. Books help us grow. To those who want to remove books from classrooms and school libraries, I would say, please don't be a prisoner of your fear. If you don't want your child to read a book, tell the teacher why and ask the teacher for another option. You can tell the librarian you don't want your child to check out that book. I have no right to make your child read any particular book, and I wouldn't want to. And you have no right to remove a book other people are willing for their children to read. Do you think teachers are indoctrinating your children? Just volunteer in their classrooms and you'll see the truth. In the evening, turn off the TV and your phone and read with your children. Talk to your children about what they read. Ask them questions. And please thank a helpful teacher or librarian for the time, effort, patience, and kindness they give to our children every day. Thank you.
Lark McGee.
Do y'all set the timer, or? It's on. Okay. My first name is Lark, L-A-R-K, and I'm going to read some excerpts from some books that I have read from cover to cover. So there's very graphic material here, so if there's any children in the room and you don't want your children to hear it, I suggest that y'all leave. His tongue swept my mouth again in time to the finger that slipped inside me. My hips undulated, demanding more, craving the fullness of him, and his growl reverberated in my chest, and he added another finger, the bundle of nerves at the apex of my thighs, and I groaned his name as I shattered. Tamlin, I begged, I palmed my breast. His thumb flickered over my nipple, and I cried out. I promised myself always it would be this way as he pulled out a few inches and the muscles of his back flexing beneath my hands, and then he slammed into me again and again. Before I could answer, he nipped at my breast, and then he licked all over my hurt, licked as his fingers at last dipped between my legs, and he stroked my legs, taunting circles. His fingers slid into me again, and he growled in approval at wetness between my thighs before him over and over again. This book is Sarah Moss, The Court of Mist and Fury. I have several. The next one is Crank from
He started with a kiss, crank revved, pistons firing full bore, passion fire cracked in tiny bursts from thigh to belly button. Oh, baby, I want you so bad, bad to the bone. We laughed, but it wasn't a joke. Not for long. My shirt tore open. Wait, I've waited for weeks. Put up and shut up. Kisses segued to bites and bruises, and pain rippled through my body. Brendan, please stop. No, you promised, you damn little tease. Off came my shorts and down went his zipper. I realized I was in serious trouble. I'll scream. Go ahead. No one can hear but skunks and coyotes. Still, as I opened my mouth, his hand slapped down over it. Those sublime muscles hardened and my brain knew Victoria's secrets. Shredded, and I felt the worst of Brendan pause, savoring my terror. Just relax, you'll love it. They all love it. He had done it in a different way. I might have responded with excitement, but instead I froze as he pushed inside. Oh, there it is. Oh, God, there it is. It went all right with an audible tear. Pain mushroomed into agony, and all I could do was go stiff. You weren't lying, you little bitch. I laid there sobbing as he worked and sweated over me and stoked by the monster. It took him long enough to finish. Give me another line and I'll give you an encore. He pulled away, sticky and bloody, throbbing inside and out. I didn't move. I didn't dare look at him in the eye. What the hell is the matter with you, Bree? I stared up at the clouds and gathered into the gloom and shrouded the moon with mine. And I told him my name was not Bree, it was Christina. Here's another incident of a violent rape. During one particular drought spell, I was hurting for certain and went looking for a source. Found him in the casino arcade crushing for fresh meat. He flashed a bindle and I followed him out to my car. I still can't believe I was stupid enough to get inside. He drove east of town all the way to the desert after a couple of snorts.
Time's
that
up.
stung, but not much.
Thank you. Time's up.
This is Crank, and these are all in the library. This one is in William Blount High School by Sarah Moss, Court of Mist and Fury. This one is in William Blount High School by Sarah Moss, Court of Mist and Fury. This one. This one.
About the world around them, not just their little bubble. I want them to read about love, about hate, about werewolves, about God, about atheists. I want our children to read. Thank you.
Rob Spucko. Announce it for me, buddy.
Yeah.
Close?
Rob Spurco.
Okay.
Yeah. The northern branch is still Spearco in like the old country, but down south it's Spurco. I am Rob Spurco. I've lived here in Blount County for 20 years. I am a person who does not have standing to challenge a book in the system under the current policy. And I want to tell you why that is actually good. I did have standing at one point. My kids went to Walland, they went to Heritage Middle, Mustang Magic, then they went to Heritage High School, but now they're graduated, and so I don't meet the requirements. I want to say that a lot of this is about trust. Most of the challengers don't seem to trust the school system. And while I'm not going to say the school system is perfect, fundamentally, I trust the people involved. I trust our educators. I trust our school librarians. They are the ones in these schools every day, seeing the total range of students. As a parent, we see our kids. We see our kids' friends to some degree, but we don't see the full range of students and their interests and their questions and their needs. Librarians do. Teachers do. Staff members do. They are the closest to the real needs on the ground, and therefore I trust them the most to know what to do. The whole point of the education system is that students need information. Either they need it to understand themselves and what they're dealing with in life, or they need to understand people whose lives and experiences are very different than theirs. In either case, it's a good idea to have as few limits as possible on the information, the stories, and the viewpoints available to them. And I trust our librarians and staff to have a better handle on that than some outside person who gets all worked up because of something they read on the internet. Allowing people who don't have standing to challenge our books puts them one remove further from the students. And then what they read on the internet is one remove further out than that. I think you should keep the policy as it is. Honestly, I think challenging books should be more difficult. But, I'm willing to accept a policy as a good balance between allowing everything and having some system in place to make sure that there's, appropriate age levels and things like that. By removing books, you will be removing tools that our educators have to help a wide variety of students. If there are books you don't want your child to have access to, you can flag them and they won't have access. But your rights end where another parent's rights begin and another child's rights begin. I strongly encourage the board to keep the policy as it is, a good balance between allowing questions, maintaining solid educational principles, and providing support for that wide variety of students that we have. Thank you.
Josh Marler.
Mr. Chairman, members, Director, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I stand tonight to talk about something a little different compared to the rest of the meeting. I appreciate hearing all of fellow citizens' concerns tonight, and it gives me great pleasure to realize that we have diverse values, and it's wonderful to hear that. But what I want to talk about to you guys tonight is this board meeting and the time that this board meeting takes place. I think it's fair to say, as Americans, we accept a general working hours between 8 and 5 p.m. A lot of folks in Blount County work in Knoxville. We all know the Alcoa Highway traffic. What I would propose to you tonight, I know that you're going to discuss this further in the meeting, I would propose that we meet in the middle and we push this meeting back 1 hour. I don't think it's a lot to ask. I would propose a 6:30 start time to allow more of your constituents to be able to be here and be heard. I think we all agree that our voices need to be heard. I'm not going to speak for 3 minutes. Thank you, board. Appreciate your service.
Susan Wright.
Hi, thank you for your service and thank you for having me. I'm Susan Wright, and I want to talk about the law. Per Tennessee Code annotated 39-17-911, it can be a Class A misdemeanor to make available to a minor any printed material that contains explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, that is harmful to minors. Harmful to minors would likely be decided by a judge. I believe Lark just gave you some good examples of that. Those are all books in our library, and I've spent about 40 or 50 hours looking into what's in our school libraries, so I think I know a little bit about that. So if I were to read from some of the books in Blount County school libraries and there were minor children in the room, I could be in violation of this law, so I won't read them, but I'll tell you about a couple of them. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison is in William Blount High School, has a very graphic and detailed description of a man raping his 12-year-old daughter. It's sickening to read. It's not appropriate for children. And by the way, I like Toni Morrison. She's a great writer, but this is for adults. Looking for Alaska by John Green is in Heritage High School. It describes in great detail a boy receiving oral sex for the first time. The boy and the girl don't know how to do it, so they go looking for Alaska, who's a girl with a lot of experience. And she demonstrates how to perform oral sex using a tube of toothpaste. The book also has Alaska watching a porn movie, also drinking alcohol. That's Looking for Alaska by John Green. A minor is under the age of 18. That's just about everybody in school unless they're a senior and they turned 18. John Green, I've looked at his YouTubes and I've researched him a little bit. The whole reason, he says, the whole reason that scene in question exists in Looking for Alaska is because I wanted to draw a contrast between that scene where there's a lot of physical intimacy, but is ultimately very emotionally empty, and the scene that immediately follows it, when there's not a serious physical interaction, but there's this intense emotional connection. Well, that's a literary device that I imagine went right over the heads of most kids who read that book. You know, I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. I'm sure they missed that writer's technique there, what he was says he's trying to illustrate. Why do we want children to read pornographic stuff? Why? I mean, what are we trying to teach them? Do we want more sexually active teenagers? Do we want more pregnancy in teens? It almost sounds like something a groomer would do. Oh, here, read this, and then, that's just disgusting. We're going to have more teen suicides, more teens pregnancies, more teens having unsafe sex. That's what we're going to get from this policy. Thank you.
Mike Wright.
What is the American Library Association? We sometimes hear that a book is recommended or promoted by the American Library Association, or that a book has won an award from the American Library Association. But what and who is the American Library Association? The American Library Association drives the training of U.S. librarians and their use of public funds. The ALA's approximately 54,000 members include librarians, libraries, library graduate schools, and members of library boards and associations. The vast majority of its membership fees, therefore, are provided by tax funds. Amid the growing concern about libraries actively connecting children to sexually explicit activities and materials, the ALA membership has voted to make Emily Drabinski a self-described Marxist lesbian as its next president. How is Marxism relevant to children and education, you might ask? Here's what history's most notorious Marxist, Vladimir Lenin, father of the Bolshevik Revolution, had to say about it. Give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seeds I have sown will never be uprooted. Give me just one generation of youth, and I'll transform the whole world. The Marxist view is that children are just tools to be used for the cause. Drabinski has posted on her Twitter feed in support of sexually exposing children and in support of libraries pushing explicit and far-left material. There are YouTubes of her lectures on the queering of libraries, where she affirms the idea that queerness includes the subversion of normal family types. She's on a mission. The ALA promotes LGBTQIA+ books and activism via its Rainbow Roundtable, formerly known as the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Roundtable. To help libraries and librarians decide what to buy, the ALA publishes the journal Book List, which, among other things, reviews and promotes LGBTQIA+ books to children. The ALA's Rainbow Roundtable since 1971 has sponsored the Stonewall Book Awards, named after the infamous New York City gay bar. There are Stonewall Awards given to LGBTQIA+ books targeted to children. The ALA is on a mission and has been for some time. So the next time you express concerns about an inappropriate book or grooming materials, and you're being rebuffed by being told that it has the American Library Association's recommendation or it has won an ALA award, ask yourself why you should subordinate your judgment to the questionable authority ascribed to this organization.
Can we have a motion to set and approve the consent agenda? We have a motion?
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Do we have a motion to set and approve the agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Item number one, do we need to okay that? You all were just discussing this. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Item number one on the agenda is discussion possible action regarding the 2023-2026 Memorandum of Understanding of the Blount County Education Association.
Move to approve.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Do we have a roll call vote? No?
Yes. Yes.
No.
Motion fails. Number two, discussion possible action on math textbook adoption. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. But I do have ask a question. I'm sorry, I should have asked it before we voted. Did we have much comment on a week of? Jake?
Jake, when you step up here, the question was public input on the mathematics
I
textbooks.
saw a lot of people reading it, and I mean, I should have asked you earlier, I'm sorry.
We had, on public input, we had 4 comments from the community on public input. But we did have parents who were on all committees, elementary, middle school, and high school committees.
Okay, thank you. I just saw people out there reading it, not going through it. Thank you. Number 3, discussion of possible action regarding budget increase for textbooks. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Number 4, discussion possible action on approval of bid number 2023-0110 for lawn services. We have a motion? We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Number 5, discussion possible action regarding a review of board policy 4.403 by the Policy Committee.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
I would just like to give clarification real quick on what exactly I would like the policy committee to do. So I want to refer this back to the policy committee to do 2 things. To review for clarity the criteria used by the district in establishing and maintaining library collections, and to review for clarity the steps to be taken when a library book is questioned or challenged. I would also like to say that if you look at our policy, I've compared it to a lot of policies in other school districts, and no policy is perfect, and ours is not perfect. And you can obviously tell today from the input from the community that there are things that we could do better to tighten up this policy. And so by putting it on the agenda today, I was allowing all community members to say how they felt. And I thought that that was something good for everybody to be able to speak from both sides so we all could take that input. Some of the things on our current policy that came up a couple times today that people mentioned was the American Library Association. In our policy, if you look at number 2, it says that materials shall be appropriate for the age and maturity level of students who may access them. The American Library Association believes that children should have access to pretty much anything that they want to read. And so that would be counterproductive to the policy that we have. And also, I think that if you look at it, it's so vague. So I think that there needs to be more understanding of exactly what does that mean? What exactly are we looking at? And then also, if you go down to number 22, it says if a complaint is made by an employee, a student, or the student's parents. So the books that have been brought to our attention, in order for someone to be able to follow these steps, they would need to be one of those 3. And I believe that a couple of the people who brought this to our attention are grandparents. And so they wouldn't be able to follow our policy. And so we want to be able to fix that for them. And then also some things that I've looked at in our policy is that it takes 20 working days to form that ad hoc community, which means you would already be a month in before the book is even discussed with other people on that committee. And so when I compared it with some of the other policies, some people it's 15 working days. And some people had 20 working days like us, but I wanted to see, can we streamline that process to make it quicker? And then also, there's nothing in there for the principal of the schools. Like, I feel like I trust the principals at our school, and there's no autonomy built into this policy for them. So that's also something that I would like our policy committee to take a closer look at. And so I just wanted to give you guys clarification, because I know that there are a lot of things going around in the community, but I wanted you to hear from me that this is why policy 4.403, I put it back up for the public to be able to review so that we could tighten it up as a school district.
Mr. Chair and Ms. Moore, I appreciate this being on the agenda. I chair the policy committee, and I want to assure everybody that we will do, if this is passed on the vote, that we will do what you ask. I think there are some things that need to be reviewed, and I think policies like this need to be reviewed with energy and frequently to make sure that we're doing what people need us to do. We'll get to this, the policy committee will get to this as quickly as possible. I don't expect we'll have a meeting until after spring break, but we'll get to it as quickly as possible. And I want to remind you all, these are public meetings, and I will promise you that we'll make an opportunity for various viewpoints to be heard. Mrs. Moore is correct, the people that have standing on our policies are Blount County School employees, Blount County School students, and the parents or guardians of Blount County School students. So that's how the policy currently stands. So that's who we will be interested in particular from hearing from. So if we approve this motion, I just wanted to assure you that's what will be happening going forward.
Can we get a point of clarification on the actual motion? Is it just to refer back to the policy committee, or do you want to add to the motion like Ms. Moore stated?
I would like to add to the motion what I just stated. Do you want me to repeat it for you?
Yes.
Still getting used to this thing. Okay, so it is to review for clarity the criteria used by the district in establishing and maintaining library collections and to review for clarity the steps to be taken when a library book is questioned or challenged.
Call for the question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Blount County School Board policy, as does state law, states that, quote, materials shall be suitable and consistent with the educational mission of the school. My question, our director, whoever wants to answer it, our attorney, well, you wouldn't. This is to Mr. Morrow. Are sexually explicit materials in some of our school libraries suitable for and consistent with the educational missions of these Blount County schools?
I think based on your policy, I think it has to be age and appropriate and maturity levels of the students who have access to them. I think we'll stick with the policy. I think our policy committee can review that to determine if this policy meets the needs of our district.
Thank you. Another question, another section of Blount County School Board policy, also as does state law. Well, the policy is 4.403. It states that, quote, materials shall be appropriate for the age, maturity levels of the students who may access them. Determining factors will be based on an assessment of any mature themes or content, for example, violence, vulgar language, sexual content, substance abuse. Have all the books in our school libraries been assessed regarding such themes or content?
I think, Mr. Porter, this policy has been in place since September the 1st. So it is a new policy based on state law. Our library collections have tens of thousands of books spanning decades and multiple librarians. So to think that every librarian has read every book in their collection would not be feasible for them to judge these against. That's why we have the complaint process at the bottom, which is very detailed. Certainly the policy committee can look into it, determine if it needs to be changed in any way to better fit our needs as a district. But we have a very good process in place with this policy that allows people to bring those complaints to us. And we can determine, do they meet the 4 criteria? But to retrofit thousands and tens of thousands of books to this policy very quickly would not be possible. So we have to take those one complaint at a time.
Understand. Another question. Senate Bill 2407, that's the Age Appropriate Materials Act of 2022, I should have said, states, beginning with the 2022-2023 school year, each school operated by an LEA and each school, public charter school shall maintain a current list of the materials in the school's library collection. The list must be posted on the school's website. Is this the case in Blount County schools?
Our main library collections have been online. We have a cataloging system. That's been online for a couple of years already for the main library. This year, the state requires all classroom libraries to be on that collection. We worked with some procedures early in the school year to determine a good timeline for Blount County schools when we have hundreds of classrooms with their own classroom libraries. Thankfully, we have a lot of teachers who wanted to maintain a classroom library and have access to more books outside of the library. So what we gave our teachers to was March the 20th. So we benchmarked against other districts, and they range from anywhere from fall break to spring break. So given the size of the task and the number of teachers that we have that it impacts, we chose March 20th as our deadline to do that. So any classroom teacher who wants to maintain books in their classroom have till that date to have those cataloged and on the websites.
Classroom teachers, but what about the general school library?
That's been for 2 years.
That has already been on there.
That's already
I believe it is 2 years.
2 years.
All the books in all the libraries are on the website.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and they're searchable
Thank you for
websites.
clarifying that.
I'm sorry if I over-explained that. I
No,
thought
no,
you
no.
might have been mentioning meeting the classroom libraries as
Probably
well.
a confusing way. Maybe Mr. Goddard could answer this question or help with it. What are the penalties for responsible school personnel, school board members, and school systems who do not comply with Senate Law 2407?
Say that again, Mr. Porter.
What are the penalties for responsible school personnel, school board members, and school systems who do not comply with Senate Law 2407?
I don't have that law in front of me right now, but if there are penalties, they would be prescribed in the law statute.
Okay.
I don't know that there are or aren't, but
Okay.
if there are penalties for violating that, it would have to be in that particular act.
Maybe we can address that next month or the next. Thank you. If there are inappropriate materials in some of our school libraries, are some of these materials bought with school funds and taxpayer money?
I think the answer would be yes. I mean, there's other sources for those to be added to the library, including book fairs, things of that nature, where the librarian are able to add things through that process. But
Donated
yes,
books?
possibly, absolutely. Mhm.
Are you aware of any donations that are from any organizations or groups or local?
I do not have any specifics right now.
Thank you. Does anything in state law dictate commitment to the Library Bill of Rights of the American Library Association? Might be an attorney.
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Does BCS, what kind of schools, pay dues for American Library Association membership?
No, sir.
No. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry I cut you off. You call for the question when you're ready.
Everybody ready to vote? Any more discussion? Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, somebody's on. Discussion and possible action regarding the school board meeting start times. Can we have a motion?
Move to approve, and I can bring a motion, or Mr. Porter, you can. Do you have a motion?
I'd like to say a couple of things.
Okay.
There's been quite a bit of discussion recently.
We got a second?
Oh.
Didn't get a second. Do you want a motion first?
That's the way we do it.
Go ahead and make a motion, and then we can all speak to it if
I'd
we
like to
need.
start at 6:30. I'll tell you why, briefly.
No, I need a motion to get it on the table.
Second. I'm
Okay, got a
seconding his motion.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Of course, there's been quite a bit of discussion recently concerning school board meeting starting times. I personally feel that it's difficult, if not impossible, for parents getting off from work at 5 to make it to a 5:30 meeting. Some parents get off from work outside of Blount County at 5 or later. Parents need to not have to rush, maybe get something to eat, touch base with their children, etc. I think we need to make it easier for parents to be involved in their children's education. That's why I proposed the 6:30 starting time. Thank you.
Mr. Porter and others, I echo that. I said last month, I don't care when the meetings start. I'm retired and I can be here. But I do think 5 was way too early. And I will tell you that when I was an employee of the school district and they were at 6:30, people said that was in the middle of supper time. So I'm all for trying 6:30, and let's see what works.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the motion. I'd like to amend it to,
Do we have a motion?
We have a.
You have a
He
second?
made a motion,
You made a motion?
and I
And
seconded
you
it.
say, okay, go ahead.
regarding the school board meeting time, that this be the last time we bring this up on the agenda until September 2023. That is when new board are seated, chairman, whatever, when we have our election.
I will happily second that.
Okay, we got two motions. Which one do we need to vote on? I guess the amendment proceeds, right? Okay, we have a motion to not handle this again till September, well, at election of officers.
Is that included in the original motion of not starting until 6:30? I mean, the board meeting start time will be 6:30, and it would be that until September.
Or if it's 5:30, it'll be 5:30 till September.
Yes,
Whatever it is.
but the motion is to start.
The motion is to start at 6:30.
Whatever the vote is not to be brought up again until September.
Okay.
If it's 6:30, it's 6:30. If it's 5:30, it's 5:30, but it doesn't change till September.
But how do we vote on that?
So you amended his motion. So you want to include that in the 6:30 change? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Okay,
what-
so the motion is, start it to,
What you need to do is vote on the amendment
First, yes.
And then vote on the motion.
Okay.
After the amendment.
okay, we have a second. Did you second his motion?
Yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we're not gonna discuss this again till September. Okay, okay. Okay, and the next one is, do we wanna move the meeting time to 6:30? And we have a motion and a second.
We do.
Okay. Do you want, all in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Roll call. No.
Roll call.
Bill Porter,
6:30. Yes.
Brian King. No. Joe Lindsay,
Yes.
Craig Owens,
No.
Erica Moore. No. Vandy Kemp,
Yes.
Robbie Kirkland.
No. Motion fails. Okay. We have comments from the Blount County Association. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Rebecca, pull that thing down. There you go.
Thank you. I wanted to thank y'all for your time, and I appreciate the board members that attended the committee for the Memorandum of Understanding and that attend policy committee meetings. I have no problem with revisiting policy. I have no problem with things going back to the MOU committee. I'm a little confused about what our next step is, so I'll be checking into that. With the policy, you were very clear, Ms. Moore, and I appreciate that. I just wanted, and I sent y'all an email earlier this week and listed as a librarian. I've been a librarian in Blount County Schools since 2006, besides being the president of the association. And I've had conversations with parents. I don't want my child to take this book out. Cool. I make sure I understand what they mean, and I say, I will do my best. I'll make a note on their account. And I sent y'all a list of the books that I've had parents ask me not to check out to their child. And not one of the books that have been brought up for concerns in the last couple years is on that list. I've had books like cookbooks, Goosebumps, which you could probably guess because those are spooky, and I don't want to give anybody's child nightmares. But I guess the point I'm making with that list is if you start going down the path of trying to make sure everything in the library is acceptable to everybody outside of a procedure, you're not going to have any books. You're not going to have a library. And I'm also very offended on behalf of our staff to be called groomers and pornographers in a public forum I have never had someone dare to say that to my face. And I doubt that there is a teacher in Blount County that is trying to groom a child. If you really feel that is the case, talking about it at a board meeting is probably not going to be your first step. And I better stop because I'm getting worked up. Thank you for listening to me.
Next up, we got comments from the community on items not on the agenda, correct? Okay. Christy Prater, first up.
My name is Christy Prater, and in addition to speaking for the Faith family on this topic, I am also speaking as an educator who has taught in the Blount County Public Schools for 17 years. I was a teacher in this community during the last school year. I was teaching in Blount County when Wit and Wisdom was adopted. Teachers had great concerns at that time, but those concerns were not considered. Over the last 5 years, teachers have raised concerns about Wit and Wisdom, but those concerns have been silenced. I know that because that happened to me when I raised a concern about it. Both teachers and administrators have raised concerns. Teachers are afraid to speak up about this. It would be easy to find teachers that would speak up for it because that's what's expected and socially accepted. Here's the issue with Wit and Wisdom. It does not teach children to read. Teachers know this. It focuses on comprehension, and we all know that students need this, but it does not teach them to read. I've heard several librarians say that the students that come to the library have great comprehension skills, but they cannot read. This puts students at an unfair disadvantage. GEOs that accompany Wit and Wisdom do not teach students to read. They do not align correctly with Foundations, which is a supplemental phonics tool. We do not blame anyone for this. We simply need to do something about it. The current director deserves to be able to chart the course using a curriculum that works. The director carries out the directions from the board. While this board did not adopt Wit and Wisdom, it is the board's responsibility to remove it and to replace it. Some roadblocks I have heard are time and money. Time is so important, especially when we think of the next school year. You all cannot afford to wait any longer. If you do, someone needs to break the bad news to kindergarten and first grade parents that the students will not be learning from a curriculum that promotes reading. Money is the other comment. You all receive $16 million from the state. There is flexibility on how it can be used. In fact, it focuses on learning loss. We cannot blame COVID for learning loss in kindergarten or first grade. I would ask that you all take a hard look at the amount of at-risk letters that went home this school year. It is staggering. A comment that I've also heard is, how can we choose something better? We are confident that there is a reading program that teaches students to read rather than indoctrinating them with material that is not age appropriate. I hope this board will have the courage to vote to remove this. It is not serving the students in our community, and it falls on your shoulders to change that.
Beth Myers-Reed.
Talk about a tough act to follow. Thank you for letting me address you again, and this time I would like to make just a general statement about the quality of education, not even necessarily in Blount County, but in our country. I graduated from a public high school in 1978. That was 2 years before the Department of Education came into existence. I'm very glad that I graduated before that organization existed. Because in 1978, the United States of America was ranked second in the world in quality of public education. And even at that, I had the opportunity about 15 years ago to read the 8th grade comprehensive exam that had to be passed in order to graduate from the 8th grade in Salina, Kansas in 1895. I could not have passed that test. At the time, I had 2 years of college under my belt. the quality of education in our country is being compromised, I believe, by a focus on topics that need to be discussed at home. I mentioned before, I know there are many homes in our country where certain things cannot be discussed. There was a very eloquent young man who talked about his personal experience. The problem is that our public schools were never designed to step in and be parents and counselors to our children. The fact that guidance has become a class that students go to is frightening. Guidance counselors always existed in the schools. They were there when I went to school. And children could refer themselves to guidance. Parents could refer their children. But there's also been discussion about censorship and banning. And if we're going to talk about censorship, we need to look very closely at the last few years and who has been censored on a national level, rigorously, by groups who promote a very tiny minority of the population of this country. Do not let the tiniest special interest groups dictate what and how we teach our children when they are falling so far behind the world academically. Thank you.
Ken Lee? That's Ken Lee.
So as a follow-on to the presentations by concerned parents and grandparents that you've heard tonight, I put together a draft policy and sent it to the school board earlier this week that will protect students and staff from exploitation. The policy is called Maintaining Professional Staff and Student Boundaries. There are multiple examples of similar policies at school districts across the country. The intent of the policy is to define boundaries or guide rails for staff and students to ensure that proper relationships are maintained. A boundary invasion is an act by a staff member that violates those boundaries with the potential for abuse. A couple of examples of boundary invasions would be any type of inappropriate physical contact between a student and a staff member, or disclosing personal, sexual, family, or other private matters to students, or perhaps unnecessarily invading a student's privacy. And one of them directly related to the book discussion tonight is showing or making available pornographic material to a student as defined in TCA Statute 39-17-10, sexual exploitation of children, based on 39-17-911, which one other person spoke about, and 39-17-901, both focusing on criminal offenses to minors. I don't believe there are any references in any school board policy to any of these statutes anywhere. So how is that possible? All three of these statutes directly address sexual exploitation of children. The policy I proposed also addresses the appearance of impropriety between staff and students, which is another concern. Violations of any kind are to be reported to the Blount County Schools Human Resources Supervisor and law enforcement as required by Tennessee statutes. The goal with such a policy recommendation is to provide support to staff and support to students and parents to ensure the boundaries are understood and enforced. I urge the board to review and approve this policy as soon as possible. Not to do so may have a profound negative effect on our children. Thank you.
Forrest Erickson.
All right, that thing needs to be where we can see it, or we'll go over. My name is Forrest Erickson, and I come as always to speak on behalf of science, and on which I want to say a few words. Fallopian tubes. I've many times remarked that it is a grave failing of our language that there are not many conversations where these two melodious words can be included. When I was in 3rd grade, a friend, call him H, approached me one day all worked up and wanted to tell me about the details of female anatomy. I do not remember him using the word vagina, but he was telling me about it in a clumsy fashion. And then what followed was the first ever anti-abortion speech I ever heard. He finished this off by saying that no one knew from which female orifice the baby came. 3rd grade me did not necessarily know the word incredulous, but boy, I felt it then, and I still feel that. My mother, a pediatric nurse, had, prior to this experience, showed me a sequence of photos of birth from her nursing textbook. So I knew that H was foolishly wrong. I do remember having the presence of mind to say, in what was with probably incredulity in my voice, do you think that with all the people born, no one has ever looked? Wouldn't the woman know? Fast forward 1 year, and we learned about human reproductive anatomy. We learned those, then to my ears, musical words, fallopian tubes, and uterus, and ovaries, and testes, and vas deferens, and gonads, and about gestation and the placenta, and embryos, and fetus, and more. I always wondered why they were called fallopian tubes. Were they perhaps fallopian shaped, whatever that might mean? In later years, I learned about the embryonic analogy that ovaries and testes have, and observed the analogy that fallopian tubes have with vas deferens. And I felt that vas deferens sounds somewhat grand, but not nearly in the same category as the musical fallopian tubes. And I've always been curious about that phrase. My mother read a lot to me about science, including how William Harvey discovered the circulation of blood. Recently, I visited an online biography of William Harvey and learned that he was friends with an anatomist who was the successor to Fallopio, that word, a professor at Purdue. And now I could understand that fallopian was the name of a man who was the anatomist who had described those things. I felt a little touch of disappointment. I was hoping for something more poetic, let's say. But having had first-hand knowledge of bad anatomy and bad ideas about reproductive processes in 3rd grade, stemming no doubt from similar sources as would oppose good science education today, I hope that the Blount County schools will have vigorous education to combat such errors in understanding of our very natural and wonderful anatomy, and especially those fallopian tubes.
John Lowe.
Director Merle and Chairman Kirkland and board members, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And, you know, as I sit and listen to all of this, and I can just imagine a lot of the responsibility that you all feel sitting here, I think realistically, none of us have a full appreciation for what you all have to deal with in making tough decisions and choices, and because you know that the decisions you make are impacting a generation of people. So number one, we admire you and we appreciate you and the efforts you make to get the best possible education for our students in Blount County. Having said all that, I'm John Lowe, and I'm pastor of Tuckaleechee Chapel Missionary Baptist Church, and tonight I'm speaking, as I always do, on behalf of the Awake 21 pastors of 28 churches in Blount County who are concerned about our students, as we know you are. We're proud of our teachers. We have no intention of implicating or saying that our teachers or our board have any motivation other than trying to get the best possible education to our students. And we applaud you for that. What we are doing is coming alongside you and expressing a concern that we have about age appropriateness, and in particular with wit and wisdom, and the idea of introducing gender identity ideology to children is unthinkable. Now, a gentleman spoke earlier about he's speaking the truth. Let me tell you the truth from which I speak. I am called by God to be a pastor and to shepherd the flock in our church. And I'm preaching what I believe is based on the Word of God. And I'm not being radical or extreme. I'm just being truthful with you. So we need to train up a child in the way they should go so that when they're old, they'll not depart. There'll be students who love America, who love people, who respect one another, who stand for decency and will not compromise the unchangeable truth of God's Word when He declares that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and forever they will be that no matter how many surgeries, how many medicines they take. We have to defend that. That's the essence of who we are. Husbands and wives were ordained from the beginning of time. God foreordained marriage, and He said it's a man and a woman. And we need to uphold the family and support that and separate this indoctrination. Not that teachers are indoctrinating. The curriculum they have is what pushes it. And we want to make sure that the best choice, and we pray and earnestly ask you, when you appoint a selection committee to review the curriculum for the next reading curriculum replacement, we're not saying burn the curriculum, ban the curriculum. We're saying take a bad curriculum and replace it with a better curriculum so our students can get the education all of us want them to have, but not be indoctrinated by a social agenda that's bent on social architecture and changing the essence of human beings. That's not what we're about. We want an education. And thank you for the hard work that you do, and we're praying for you, and we'll stand behind you for every right decision that you all make to stand up for. We're just asking you to vote to replace wit and wisdom with a better curriculum. Thank you.
We got comments from the board? No, from the board first. You got something? Comments from the director?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kirkland.
Oh, I've got one more thing. I've got something. Next month, comments to the board, we're going to have a safety update to the board members. Stan Burnett's going to put it on. Some from the new board members that haven't been included in this stuff, and we'll go over that in April's meeting, okay? Sorry, go.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. I did want to announce that the Tennessee Organization of School Superintendents, of which I am a member, designated February the 27th to March the 3rd of this year as Public School Week. And speaking before you this evening, I am a proud graduate of public schools. Also this school system, and I'm very proud of that and proud of where I'm from. And I want to say thank you to 1,700 people who come to work every day to maximize the academic growth of every student. They love your students. Many of them live in this community, and they take care of the needs of 10,400 students, and I appreciate that. I'm proud of our public schools. This evening, I want to say, Board, I appreciate your support of early adopting or purchasing, for the mathematics textbooks. So that'll allow us to get them in the summer. It'll get them to our teachers in time for them to prepare for the school year, so they'll be ready first day for students. So that is a great thing, and thank you for that. I did want to announce on Thursday, March the 30th, 6 p.m., we will have our 2023 class of the Educator Hall of Fame. And one of your very own, Mr. Fred Goins, is going to be inducted into that class. So let's give it up for Mr. Goins on that. I'm very proud of his work as a teacher, principal, and a board member for over 40 years now. So thank you, Mr. Goins. Also, spring break coming up, March 13th to 17th. I know our staff and students are looking forward to a much-needed break and to have that final push with state testing and everything in the spring and wrap up the school year. So thank you all so much.
Mr. Chairman, before you call for adjournment, I need some clarification. What time are we meeting next month?
At 5:30.
At 5:30.
Anybody got comments on the hospital?
We had a lady at the podium.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss you?
You would think I would have learned
Say
that
your
by
name.
watching everybody. My name is Brooke Givens. I am a parent, and I live in Blount County. I wanted to tell a story. Listened to everybody tonight. I had a coworker at lunch the other day tell me that her daughter brought home a book from school. This was Knox County, so we won't cast stones there, but that she felt like it was not age appropriate for her daughter. And it was a book about the Holocaust. And what she did was she sat down with her daughter and said, you know, this is a very important subject, this is important history, but I want to read ahead a little bit and see what's in this book to see if it's okay for you to read, because there may be some things in here that you're not ready for at 9 years old. And she decided that there were. And I tell you that story because that's what happens. That's what happens when kids check out books, is they go home, they discuss it with their parents, and their parents get to educate their children as part of that process. In thinking about that, I'm like, man, what would I say to my 9-year-old, I have a 12 and a 6-year-old, about the Holocaust? How do you explain how seemingly good people got to this point? And I'm speaking because it starts with little seeds of hate, little seeds of fear that grow into something very, very dangerous, and it starts with things like banning books and censorship, and deciding that one very good-meaning group of people who want to protect children have the right to decide what's right and what I can talk about and what I can teach my children about, and that is not okay. And I'm very, very scared about the trajectory we go from here if we allow people to decide based on their own faith systems and their own moral fortitude what is right for other people. It's profoundly un-American. And I think the policy that you have in reviewing it is perfectly appropriate, and I would encourage you not to be swayed by political agendas that grow into something very, very dangerous, and it starts with things like banning books and censorship, and deciding that one very good-meaning group of have the right